Well, good morning, everybody. This is Vivek Joshi. I'm the host of our new podcast, Aftermarket Champions. We just launched it recently. And with me today is our first ever guest, Scott Patterson. Scott is a longtime customer and friend, and he has a unique distinction and claim to fame of being literally one of our first quote unquote software customers. He never fails to remind me about this, and I'm sure he'll remind me about it a couple more times today. But with that, I want to make sure I introduce you to Scott. Scott today is a VP of the Fire Connect business at Peerless Pump, which is a division of Grundfos. He's based in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I'm pleased to welcome him to the podcast. So welcome, Scott. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Vivek.
Scott, you and I got to know each other in 2017, about this time in 2017, I think. So it's been 6 years, which is more than dog's years in the startup land.
Yeah.
You've been a good customer, good friend. I'd love for people to understand a bit more about your background. So maybe you can give us a little bit of Scott's story, how you got here.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Vivek. Thanks for your time today. Hopefully this is meaningful to folks that listen to it. So I'm Scott Patterson. I work for a company called Peerless Pump based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm actually the vice president of the fire business in total, which the Fire Connect piece is a subset of that. But I started out my career after college at working for General Motors and production supervision, managing truck assembly lines. Got into continuous improvement. From there, I wanted to change the world, and GM probably wasn't the place that was going to happen. So I went to work in the RV industry, a company called Fleetwood Motorhomes, where things stepped back probably 2 decades in time from General Motors in terms of technology and process and method. Began to make a big stink about quality and continuous improvement. So they created a job for me there, and ended up just working in the quality world within one plant, then ultimately multiple plants. And then from there, my journey took me to Peerless here in Indianapolis, initially as director of quality and continuous improvement, and then shortly thereafter into more mainline manufacturing management responsibility, and then eventually into customer service. From there into service management, which is where I met Vivek. From there to our IoT solutions, and now into this vice president role for the fire business. So that's just trying to bring value to processes and to companies for the last 25 years. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's a really great progression story, by the way. And two things. One is a correction. You're right. You're in charge of the entire fire business, which is Fire Connect, and the fire pump business, the full P&L, which is new equipment and the service side, the aftermarket
Correct.
side. So that's one correction. The second thing is an observation. You and I both also have something else in common. In addition to loving the business of service, I also got my start in manufacturing. So my first job in the U.S. after my MBA was running a manufacturing plant and factory floor at Johnson & Johnson. So that's why we get along so well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Scott, I think the career start you had is not dissimilar from a lot of people who start in manufacturing. You wind up at the factory floor, you wind up in quality, maybe process. Sometimes people take a little turn and go into sales. You wound up in service and aftermarket. Why did that come about? Why did you want to do that job, and what kind of led you into that role? It'd be great to understand that, the thinking behind it.
Yeah, so I think the one thread in my career that I've always employed is basically listening, and whether that's listening to improve a process, probably very much a part of my continuous improvement training, black belt training, all those things. To listen, to find data for measuring different processes, and trying to understand things. So part of that led me to, and my ability to relate to and talk to customers led me to being pushed out to the forefront of some very interesting and difficult situations, warranty type situations, or disgruntled customers. And that's probably where I began to, in the RV industry, began to pick up, the art of service recovery. Mm-hmm. We had a very active and healthy service business, and quality was a part of that. Service would find it, have to deal with it, and they'd bring quality in to try to make sure it didn't happen again. And so I latched on to a couple really influential people in my career, and they we would travel the country at these RV shows and rallies, listen to customers, and then I'd go back and improve the process. So it was going into customer service from that point, getting out of core manufacturing, which is where I love manufacturing. I love processes. I love the people that make the products, all those things. But, that progression into listening to people and listening to what issues are, and then being able to take those inputs and then change processes, just led me a natural progression into service. So that's really the listening aspect, and then doing something with that feedback. And now that's grown into a number of different avenues. I just scheduled a voice of customer session with one of our major clients this morning, just to make sure that we were getting their real issues or perception issues out on the table to improve the relationship. So that's kind of how I ended up in service, being able to deal with difficult situations, listening, and then being able to operationalize those aspects.
You said a couple of things, that I think 3 different things, which I think are important, but I think it's also, that's a transformation that's happening in service, right? So you said you got involved because of quality, some issues, service issues related to that. You also started listening to a lot of stuff, right? Trying to understand and then bring that back to product and quality and so on and so forth, and resolve customer issues, like you talked to the voice of the customer stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the third thing that you didn't say, which I look at you and observe, I've been seeing it for the last 6 years now, and I just see it in you, especially more so in the last couple of years, is that in addition, part of the listening trick is knowing what the customers aren't saying, and then building something around it, right? So when I think of service and service transformation, look, you and I grew up in what I would call the break fix service days, right? Stuff breaks, warranty happens, things happen, go send somebody out, get it fixed. But a lot of service, where it's headed to now, is doing exactly what you're doing. It says, hey, what are they saying and what are they not saying? And I think that's one of the unique attributes that I've observed about you, is that you have this listening ability to parse through what's not happening. And so help me understand with that last thread, how did you get involved? Actually, the 2 parts of it. One is, how did you parlay that into your service role when we met you?
Mm-hmm.
And then how did you parlay that into the Fire Connect role? Because that is an innovation aspect that you guys did. So that's also part of those, in my mind, that's how you brought those 3 things together. Does that make sense?
Certainly. And I think what I would call, I often talk about, you got to jump on a boat from a dock. Sometimes you're in, you can pull it pretty tight to the dock and take the small step. And sometimes, your brother-in-law is driving by at 20 miles an hour and you got to jump on the boat. And so, one of the things that I'm taking a lot of different inputs and trying to synthesize that information. And so that's kind of from those, and then where you may not have data, or you may not be able to, you've got, it's where your gut feel comes in. Being able to synthesize those things, there's a human nature aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And then really just look around the corner and say, where is this going? See, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a voracious consumer of podcasts and trying to build my knowledge base always. And I'm listening and trying to hire people smarter than me, that have different points of view, befriend people like yourself who are industry experts to try to understand where things are going and then make it make sense to us. So that's that's just, I don't know if it's innate or if it's, part of it's strategic, because, you have to pick up knowledge. You have to figure out strategies for things. But I've always been able to do that to some degree. It's becoming more critical now, and more strategic roles, planning the business for the next, 3 to 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
The IoT aspect of what we're doing and what, how we've been at it for a number of years, 10 years, but I was in the ground floor of that, and just listening and understanding and be able to take a lot of different inputs, synthesize it, and make it make sense, operationalize it, and then help it become, or make it become, transformational. Mm-hmm. So IoT is obviously something that's really big and critical. Sensors have been around for a long time, but actually doing more with them. Mm-hmm. And then commercializing things. That's where we are now, is trying to commercialize our technology, and we're beginning to have really good success, but it's still early days for our industry. And but yeah, it's synthesizing the many inputs that you get and being mindful enough to know what you know and know what you don't know, and then bring in other points of view when you need the help.
Yeah. That's actually interesting. And I'm going to use that as a segue to go back 6 years. When we first met you, you said you were a service director. I think you were in the central part of the country, if I remember correctly, as in that was your territory. You had 3 of the peers, but you were kind of leading the charge, if you may. There was something going on in your head. There was something you were struggling with. And, to some degree, what I want to understand is it's kind of making you rewind a bit 6 years, if you may. What is going on in your mind? What were you transforming, coming back to the transformation word? And what is it about Entytle that was resonating with you in terms of solving that problem? Because I really want to understand what problem you were trying to solve in the transformation journey, because I think that's really part of the story here and your career as well.
Yeah. So a number of different things were going on, but the biggest of which is that we were working, our parent company, Grundfos, Danish-based company, we were working to commercialize service like we never had before. And Peerless has always had a very strong service business. We just had our 100-year anniversary this year. And so we've got a legacy installed base of products, and some that last 50 to 60 years, right?
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon for us to pull a pump out of the ground and do huge pumps. If they're fairly well maintained, they'll last a long time. And so, we're really good at that. We're less good at, and that's reactionary break fix type service, right? So but we know that we probably only really touched about, from our repair standpoint, less than 5% of the assets activity that we had going on serial numbers that we could track, less than 15%. And so somebody was doing service on our assets, right? So we wanted to commercialize our ability and leverage our ability in our network of service locations. And so, we have Grundfos, the parent company, multiple locations around the country, but not much knowledge of the Peerless installed base or traditional customers. So we were looking for a way to take our many, over the years, our many ways that we captured this installed base information and synthesize it, put it into one engine, and spit something out that could help us make more money. And so we began to look for those solutions, building it ourselves, putting a UI on the front end of something, do whatever it may be. And we luckily stumbled across you. I think one of your guys at the time must have seen my new LinkedIn profile, and he sent me an email about Entytle. So we clicked on it. From there, I refused to click on anything else because it's been years of work.
Yeah.
But it led us to, we really wanted to visualize our data. We wanted to make it simpler for folks that didn't have 30 years of experience with Peerless. It's not uncommon to have 30 years of experience. We've had individuals with 60 years of experience recently retire.
That's amazing.
So we were trying to make it easier for a broader sales force and support network throughout the U.S. to utilize the Peerless installed base. And so we had some early success with, out in your former neck of the woods in the San Francisco Bay Area, giving about 100 potential sites to one of our colleagues, and that work actually turned into 2 jobs that were well over $1 million worth of revenue over the course of a couple of years. So that led us to an investment in an installed base tool, which ultimately led us to be your first customer on the software. So that we didn't know at the time.
But I'm eternally grateful for that, Scott. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But there's something you said also, which actually 2 things you said which are important for me to highlight for our audience as well, right? we talk about the transformation journey. I mean, this started in 2017 and might have started before that because that's how we stumbled across what you and Shehzad and others were doing back then. So the journey is long invariably. People expect magic. People expect, instant gratification, but it isn't so. I think that's an important thing I want to make sure we highlight to our audience as well. The other word you've used a couple of times, which is I think is really important, and I think it's I think what differentiates guys like you from some other people that we see in the business today, which is you've used the word synthesis a number of times. And when I think of you and some of the other folks we're going to interview for the next few episodes out here, I think I hate to use the word superpower, we're going to use it. That's a superpower that most of you have, which is you're synthesizing a whole bunch of different inputs and trying to connect dots, as I call it, and make sense of it and apply it to your thing, right? So it's 2 points here. One is the transformation journey is long. I'd love to hear a little bit of your take on that. And then I want to also you to come back to this synthesis stuff, because that's a incredibly underappreciated attribute in transformation leaders, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I'd love to hear your thoughts on both, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll probably start with the synthesis topic first. It's something I was fortunate enough to and part of it is probably just a learned behavior, but part of it was emphasized. I actually took an MBA at University of Tennessee in 2008, executive MBA, and that was a part of. I mean, it was hammered home. The first assignment was, get to the point, synthesize information quickly, and take all of these things, all of these inputs, and make it make sense to your business and make it make sense to your people, so you can be transformational.
Yeah.
And so that's I've gotten better at that over the years, and it's becoming working within a system, which I was really great. It was great to grow up at General Motors. I mean, I'm so thankful for that opportunity in a traditional, in a wonderful way to bring up new leaders. I actually encourage people to find a big company to go to work for before you go to work for a small company, because
I agree.
Does help you, gives you discipline, and gives you gives you a lot of resources that you may or may not have in a smaller company. It slots you into a position as opposed to having a really wide job description, and
right.
That's great too at some point, but it's good to understand how to be a part of a team. So synthesizing information is just something that's probably experiential, but it's also intentional. And that can come from it's all your data inputs. It's see, hear, learn, read, get told, and the people that are around you, watching what works, what doesn't work. So that's,
how do you apply that to the transformation journey you've been on? Because again, you've been continuously synthesizing all kinds of inputs from all kinds of people as you've done this journey for the last 6 years or more, right?
Yeah.
How has that manifested itself?
Yeah. So, there's been a couple of threads, right? So driving, I often call it the red thread, but driving value is continuing to drive the value to the company, and trying to make sure that the things that I know that are going to move the needle are like, I know installed base moves the needle. And we've had more success and less success at times as we've been either invested or not invested in the people to use the tool. So I think making sure you're grabbing enough information to support and drive your transformation. Transformational activities are, I just saw this on another podcast, a lot harder to do in a transformational digital activities from a change management standpoint than it is process change management on the shop floor. We have, I guess it's been about being a bit stubborn, knowing that this will work, but also just continuing to drive the point home that there's an installed base out there that's really important, really valuable. We need to go after it, need to mine it, need to listen to people, need to invest in the people to actually utilize it. There's early days we drove around the speed bumps and roadblocks to try to find people that would buy into the activity. Now we're driving through the roadblocks. We're stopping and waiting to make sure that, we get people on board to, because it's so valuable. So, we've had a number of different strategies. The main strategy hasn't changed. The operationalizing how you get there and how you get people on board is different. I think what we expect out of our interaction with Entytle is a little different than in the past. I mean, 2017, we stumbled upon data visualization and the beginning of AI with you. Like, oh wow, look at that. They actually know more about our customer than we do. And so, utilizing, what you do to clean data and your special sauce behind what generates how you visualize data has been really helpful. So, the installed base, more than 24 times I've been able to tell a customer, here's the assets we have, and it just gives us tremendous amount of credibility. And we're talking huge, extremely well-known brands, companies, Fortune 100 companies that get really impressed when you know what assets they have, and that you've invested in something that helps them help themselves. Right? We've shared our installed base with these folks to say, "Oh, we'll give it to you. Here's the data." So, not sure if that exactly answered your question, but it's.
Well, I think it is, and I think the two parts that you answered. One is the synthesis part of the whole mindset, and then how do you apply that to transformation and why transformation takes long. I think you're right. I mean, in the beginning, you were trying to pick and choose the right people, find the early winners, invest in them, get them to succeed. But then in a large company like Grundfos, Peerless, that change is hard to make work, right? And I think then you decided to default to a slightly different approach, which is, look, we've been patient, we've tried to bring you along, but now the train's moving. I want you to get on there. And if you don't, the train's going to be gone. You're going to be left at the station or worse, by the side of the tracks, right? I think that's a big change. The other thing that I actually was interested in hearing your point of view, because you and I have talked about this recently a lot, is, again, I referenced this early in the conversation. When I think of people like you, you have a unique customer-focused, commercial, what I would call commercial mindset, commercial acumen, which is another fancy way of saying you're always trying to figure out from the sales and marketing point of view. One of the big issues that I've seen in industrial manufacturing companies, and especially more so in the service and aftermarket groups, is this lack, I'd call the skill will gap in terms of commercial stuff. How are you trying to overcome that in your business? And I know in the fire business, you've taken certain steps to rectify that. Maybe we can touch on that a bit, because I think that's part of the transformation story as well.
Yeah, it's and some of this, the commercial acumen, some of it's profile driven, some of it's, there's a difference between an account manager and a hunter, hunter gatherer. And so that's something we probably learned the hard way to some degree. But it also confirmed, why we are who we are, I guess. And then how to begin to change what we want to be for the future. This trend toward, we don't want more customers. We just want more. we want more volume with more money, more revenue. But to do that, sometimes, we're dealing with, we sell through distribution primarily. There's some larger jobs that we'll take direct, or some clients that prefer us to go direct to them. But we want to pull our business, influence the end user, pull that through our distribution, provide value to our distribution to grow their business, but also, we want them to fly the Peerless flag the highest. We want them to think about us the most. We want them to be the most aggressive. So I think the one thing that I've seen, and it's really not a commercial acumen, but it's more of a palms up approach to working with people, which is, and it's this idea of assisting to sell. I personally, if you come in to sell me something, I'm not going to buy it. I just don't want to be sold. You say, hey, I know that you probably already did your research. Let me know if you need something, if you need a different color or a different size. That's the type of person I'm going to buy from, and that's my
Mhm.
personal mantra. And I think that works well in our industry.
Yep.
So we try to expose data, try to put our internal people in a better environment to assist them to sell. The
Mhm.
same thing is our distribution assist them to sell, whether I'm
Mhm.
flying out to Austin, Texas to meet with our customer and then go meet with their large customer to help influence. That's assisting to sell. And it takes
Yep.
on a number of different um, forms. I think that, so part of it is, profile driven, but a lot of it is just trying to be the easiest company to do business with. And Entytle allows us to cut to the chase quickly, right? You
Yep.
synthesize a lot of data for us, and you bring a visualization of that data in a number of different ways to help us assist to sell,
Yep.
uncover information, uncover insights that we don't typically have. And then if there's something that we're missing, you're there to help us say, we think you should be doing this, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So the commercial side is, a wise person in our company said, I said, okay, this was maybe, well, it was 2016, 2015, 2016, and I was responsible for aftermarket sales. And I said, okay, give me your best advice about selling. He goes, just keep going back. I'm like,
Mhm.
all right, okay,
Interesting.
what do you say? He goes, just keep showing up,
Mhm.
keep helping them out. Eventually they'll buy from you. So, and that is that, persistence, that's the stubbornness, that's the competitiveness that comes out that says, I want to win. We've
Yep.
got, so it really delights me to see our folks successful, having breakthroughs, transformational breakthroughs, our distribution have transformational breakthroughs, et cetera. So, and that's,
Yeah.
it's, because at the end of the day, I believe we all want to be a part of a winning team. And then at some point in time, you got to win,
Yeah.
win
That's right.
more than
Win
your
more than you don't.
competition.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
No, that's actually important, and I think what you said on just show up and keep showing up every day is the persistence and the grit and the resilience is really an underappreciated part of the sales story. By the way, right?
yeah.
You know me, you know some of our colleagues, and I keep telling them the same thing. Like, look, the two different lessons. One is you only win the races you start, so you got to show up,
Yeah.
and the person who wins is the guy who's going to show up more often than not, get more at bats, and keep showing up, and that's how you're going to win. And I think that's an important lesson. Scott, I want to switch a little bit to if I think of the progression. You started as a factory grunt, and then you moved up to a quality guy, a process guy, a service guy. Then you ran the aftermarket business for Peerless Pump, and now you're running a full P&L. That's pretty remarkable progression for most people. I actually think it's quite interesting because to me, even though I'm really in the business of aftermarket and service, I've also had a similar career where I've done everything. I'm seeing that shift start happening. Is it just my imagination that there are people like you who are now coming through the service business and becoming P&L leaders? Or is it just that my customer base and people like you are just self-selected because I gravitate to folks like you? What is it? Is it my bias or is it a trend you're seeing now?
It may be a little bit of both, but no, I think the we know this. We've talked about this, that industrials are trying to unlock the next key to growth, and aftermarket commercialization, getting closer to your end user. Those strategies, like, there's nothing here that I've said that is my own thought, right? I'm
Yeah.
still shamelessly, and I've
Synthesizing.
synthesize it, implement it. Early in my career, I thought I had to have all the original thought and do all that stuff and make the best PowerPoint and do all the cool branding for the and-on boards and the dashboards. And now I realize it's just, listen, it is synthesizing information.
Yeah.
It's moving the needle. It's transforming things. So I do think that there's probably, the aftermarket topic has gotten a lot of, internally within companies, a lot of investment, because of the high margins and perceived lack of penetration into that space. It is
Mhm.
also differentiator against competition, right? The company that's selling a knockoff or some other cheaper solution. So it's a way to endear yourself to customers, and that tends to put you into somebody in the aftermarket leadership and into board meetings and other places where they get maybe a little bit more. And, the topics are IoT and installed base, and not utilization of labor, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
I mean, that's a topic down the road, but it's not the topic that everybody wants to
discuss right
lean
away
into and lock into and invest into. And so maybe it is a little bit of both. You've just found some guys that listen and want to change and transform, and then they also are those that are doing changing old industrial companies, like for the next wave of growth, or preparing it, transforming it into what it should be in 2023 and into the next couple of decades. So
I think you're right.
Probably bolstered by the fact that all of the guys before us have made their money, and now they're on a beach and somewhere, and I'm not. So they're aging out, retiring.
That's right. No, but I think
I'm just the last guy staying. I just stayed around long enough, apparently.
Sometimes hanging around the hoop is always a good thing.
Exactly.
But I think the points you made are really important, right? And I think you're right. It's both. I think there's a recognition that this business is great. You take this forgotten business and make it successful, which is what you did. That brings you into the boardrooms, into the senior executive discussions, gives you a seat at the table. And that seat at the table gives you exposure to start getting other at-bats that you probably wouldn't have got otherwise. And I'm seeing that across the board. And most of our customers, interestingly enough, Scott, is they've followed very similar paths. Maybe somebody's in finance, or maybe somebody's in quality, maybe somebody was an engineer, but they've taken these steps, established themselves. And maybe I'd like to kind of give you my 2 cents on it, because you and I both have daughters about the same age, and my daughter asked me, Dad, what are the lessons you want to give some young people like me? And I said them very simple, right? You own a number, you deliver that number. You own a commitment, get it done, and then make sure you never let people down, right? This sounds really trite and trivial, but those 3 things make a difference. And when I think of the stories you've told me so far in terms of your background and what you did, I guarantee you those 3 elements were the work for you to get to where you're today.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It used to be coming up through General Motors and then Fleetwood Motorhomes. They wanted you to get to the point where you could own a number, right? They wanted to make sure that, and that is the one thing that I think is important. And I'm not as rigid in what I think somebody should follow from a career progression in certain roles. I just am not that way, but I do think there's tremendous value in owning a number, whether that's delivering a sales target, monthly sales target, or quarterly or annually, or whether it's a shipment target. Making sure you're on time, whatever that is, in the manufacturing operations, going the extra mile to make sure delight your customers, those types of things. I think there is a tremendous value in that semi-stressful activity that drives your behavior, helps shape that behavior to help shape the outcome of the business, and that gives you the ability to then progress from there. So I've owned that number, owned that shipment target, owned that sales target, owned that forecast, all those things over the years, and it does give you a different tempo, pace, sense of responsibility, teamwork, all those things. So.
What's left unsaid in that is it brings you huge credibility, right? The moment people say, I can count on Scott to do certain things repeatedly, you automatically build up this credibility bank that then allows people to take a chance in you when you may not have a right to have that chance otherwise. Right. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a build upon, that's something that's important. Deliver on your promise. Don't overpromise. Don't sandbag. Don't sandbag, because that's bad too. But try to deliver on what you say you're going to do. Be Scott, realistic and not irrationally exuberant to
totally.
take it all on, which is probably one of my blind spots. I like to think I have superpowers and can do more, but I check myself every day, so it's good.
We all sometimes tend to be more confident than we need to be, but that's okay. That's what sometimes got us to where we did.
Yeah.
Scott, we've been talking about half an hour. I want to be mindful of your time. When I think of the progression, the aftermarket business, now the full P&L. What are maybe a couple of pieces of advice you can give aspiring aftermarket leaders who want to eventually, wind up in a place like you are today?
Yeah.
What's a good way to kind of summarize for them things they should think about?
Yeah. So understand your business, know your customer, and then understand your strategy and be able to hook your strategy to your personal work product to that strategy. I believe that, and then I've gotten better at storytelling. I probably tell too many stories. I'm trying to get away from so much of that. But there is a story to be told, and it's a way to endear yourself to the people around you to make change happen. I would advise folks to work. I always work within an existing system. And then learn how to become transformational. Figure out how to become transformational, and a lot of it is deliver on your promise. But make it your own. You've got. If I'm passionate about what we do, the people are amazing that I work with. It's probably the one real reason I'm still there is our team is awesome, and I feel like I have a responsibility to make them successful too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you find something to be passionate about, and if what you're doing doesn't instill some passion or that drive to want to go the extra mile at times or all the time, then you're probably in the wrong place. So find that place where you're going to enjoy your work and enjoy your customers and enjoy what you do. I wouldn't have thought that working in the pump industry was something that I would be tremendously passionate about, but I find amazing stories all around the world, and to be really proud of what we do. The city I live in, that produces 25 million gallons of water a day. I would say the Peerless pump is involved in that 25 million gallons of water. So all the sprinklers and all the toilets and everything else that is using water is enabled by a Peerless product. So that's pretty cool. We've got fire pumps in the 7 tallest buildings in the world, which is pretty cool. It's a story to tell. So be passionate about it, make it your own. Tell the story, and ultimately become. You'll become transformational. So get stuff done to help whatever that strategy is, whatever that number is, whatever it is. So.
I think those are very wise words, Scott. And I think if I were to kind of summarize the last 35, 40 minutes that we just spent together, I think the 3 or 4 things that are taken away. And I think the first part is, I think the listening skills that you talked about, the ability to be customer empathetic and listen to what's going on, both said and unsaid, that really is a part of the story. The second part of the story is, as we talked about, is being reliably execution oriented, so people can count on you and understand and kind of do it. It's a persistence, not just showing up to work, but showing up in front of the customer every day, knowing that they know that you're there for them. And the fourth thing, I think you touched on it at the end, is being able to tell these stories, because eventually facts are facts, but facts resonate more with the stories that surround them. And I think all those things come together in terms of kind of making you an aftermarket champion, and more importantly, a leader now who's going on to bigger and better things. So I think that's been a fantastic 35, 40 minutes with you, Scott. I really appreciate it. I think there's so much wisdom here that we can distill, that I'm hoping that our customers, our audience, our community we're building around this whole notion of aftermarket takes it away. I'm more excited because, as I said, you've given me a chance twice. You gave me a chance in 2017, first time with Entytle Insights, and now first time with a podcast cast. So, Scott, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. It's been fun, as always. So
excited. Thank you. Thank you, Scott.